Good morning, it's the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals public hearing for February 10th? Not public hearing, I'm sorry. This is Monday. Review session for February 10, 2020. Appeals calendar, new cases, item number 1, 2019-199A, 1045 Madison Avenue, Manhattan.
Okay, with this one, I believe the application is no longer ripe for consideration as the zoning lot that was the subject of the original appeal has changed. Appellant's concerns about the zoning lot subdivision and whether the buildings on the subdivided lots comply with zoning and multiple dwelling laws should be reviewed by DOB, and a final determination on those issues should be provided. And if DOB upholds the subdivision and zoning review, then the appellant can file a new appeal here. And this is on recommendation of council, so I don't think there's any discussion to be had. We're just not going to hear this appeal. Okay.
Will it be dismissed tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless it's taken to withdraw.
They can withdraw it, but we don't have jurisdiction any longer. Is the Build It Back, where's the Build It Back case on the
Oh,
calendar?
I'm sorry, yeah, we should have called Build It Back first, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's not actually on the calendar, the
It is.
Build It Back case? No, I don't have a calendar that shows Build It Back.
Oh, we revised it, so maybe Mary
It
Ellen
wasn't
didn't
sent out.
Okay, I'll make sure that it's sent out, but Bill, do you want to do that one next? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We'll do it tomorrow first, I apologize.
Okay.
A little off today. Item number 6 on the zoning calendar, 2020-15 BZ, 787 Patterson Avenue, Staten Island. This is the Build It Back case.
Right, so it's a Build It Back application, so we waive the board rules for notice requirements and fees since HPD is the effective applicant. There was we had a submission this morning, which I haven't had a chance to review, but there were some errors that I wanted to go over and to make sure that the applicant knows to correct those errors. There's a statement in the statement of facts that as a result of the lifting of the existing building, the lot size was reduced. You could ask, why would the lot size be reduced just because you lifted the building? I think the correct answer is the two buildings were lifted together and shifted on the lot, and that's obviously what happened. So the party wall that you drive the tax lot line through changes, right, because the whole thing was shifted together. So they need to explain that differently, because that sounds quite strange that you lifted and the lot changes.
The building is semi-detached, and it sounds like when they lifted, one of the two went to like...
No, they lifted both together because they're semi-detached, and when they lifted it, they shifted it like this, so then they had to draw the party line through a different location, and so one side kind of loses out. It doesn't get as big of a lot. It's also kind of a little bit weird. So that's one. The new lot requests, though, subdivision requests were filed in 2019, in June, but I understand why DOB can't permit these without our waiver, because whenever you're looking at a tax lot subdivision, they look to see if it complies with zoning, and in this case, it wouldn't comply with zoning. Our project manager had some comments on the statement of fact, which need to be looked at before tomorrow's hearing. They may have been corrected this morning, but I don't know. They need to verify the reduced rear yard distance as the plans and statement don't match. They need to verify that the required lot width and area cited for this use is correct. In other words, are they right that it's I think it was an 1,800 square foot lot. There are, let me see. It says, let me see. The applicant says the lot width will be 17.93 feet. Surveys don't clearly show that number. The waiver sections appear correct. The property contains a semi-detached home, so Appendix A sections don't apply. There's inconsistency in the front yard measurement. The statement doesn't match the chart or plot plan, otherwise it seems like the measurements were okay. There were some comments about, there's a list of the waivers. Minimum required rear yard depth 30 feet, distance has been reduced from 29.5 to 29.2.
2.
Where it doesn't quite match the drawings. That statement, they need to make sure it matches the drawings. Maybe the correction matches. I'm basing this on what I had up until this morning.
Well, this morning, yeah, it does say that the minimum distance has been reduced from 7 on 23,461, which is minimum required distance between residents on adjacent lots, 8 feet. It was originally 7.9, it's been reduced to 6.6. Rear yard depth has been reduced from 29.4 to 29.2.
No, but so it was the
Yeah.
feet and inches that were incorrect. It says 29.5 to 29.2, which is not the same as .2. So they need to make sure that the plans match. Maybe they do now, but they need to make sure. And then also.
I have I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I have on the plans that I printed out this morning, the rear yard is 29.2.
29.2 inches?
Yeah, 2 feet. Well,
Okay,
it says 2
but
feet.
it's not just the plans, it needs to coordinate with the statement. I'm reading the statement information. The statement wasn't coordinated with the plans. You don't need to go through it, it's just that they need to make sure
Okay,
they
sure.
pick this up, right? Okay, and then the other one was to verify that the front yard width is correct, that the front of the lot width has been reduced from 20 feet, 0 inches to 17 foot, 11 inches. They need to make sure that those match the plans. That statement matches the plans, and there's 2 places at least in the statement where they repeat these things, so they need to make sure it's internally consistent, okay?
Right, okay.
So that's something they need to do, all right?
Okay.
And that's it.
Thank you. Special order calendar, continued hearing items, item number 2, 75178BZ, 200-15 Northern Boulevard, Queens.
In response to the community board and this board's comments, the property owner has made some changes to the site and agreed to reduced hours. A trash enclosure that I think of as rather odd proportions relative to the location into which it was placed was constructed, but without seeking our approval first. It is only large enough for the dumpsters and not the tires. No proposal was made to store the tires at the interior or how to deal with that. They still insist on leaving them outside after a very long discussion about how they should be kept inside. But I'm also concerned about the weird triangle that's left over between this new dumpster enclosure and the storage container, being an attraction for trash and debris, which we know is an issue on this site, especially because the owner-operator won't be able to see what's going on there from inside the business area. It's concealed by the dumpster. And I'm also concerned for the safety of pedestrians that walk by at night. It's the perfect, hide in the corner and jump out from behind the wall location. And I know that there was a discussion about continuing that fence all the way across the property line to follow the line of the property so that you wouldn't have that situation and there'd be more room to store things inside there. So I don't understand why they went ahead and did that. And then I have a comment from Commissioner Shanda that she's okay with the proposal. And the hours are being changed from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday, where the community had trouble with it being open much longer hours. Other comments?
No comments from me.
Nothing for me.
Okay. Okay.
Item number 3, 33279BZ, 4320 Little Neck Parkway, Queens.
The little color wheel is going around like this. Sorry. It's still going around like this. It's adjourned, right? What?
It is.
Yeah.
It's adjourned? I can't.
Yes.
I can't. Sorry, I'm frozen.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't, okay. I didn't-
Yeah, there's a little wheel that goes around that says it's thinking, or whatever it's doing. Okay, yes, so it's
Fourth adjournment.
So this is, yeah, so it is an adjourn. So there was a dismissal letter sent on October 30th, and another adjournment is requested. And so they submitted a letter saying, we know that there was a dismissal letter, and the owner's going to come in and explain why it shouldn't be dismissed, but I don't know why it shouldn't be dismissed. So they haven't been here for well over a year. So the last time they were here was December of 2018, and it's been adjourned since then. The problem is, it's an extension of a variance, and so if we dismiss it, no more variance. That's pretty serious, and I'm hoping that the owner understands the seriousness of that.
All right, so it's okay for them to come, they're going to come tomorrow and we'll hear them?
I guess, well, then that's not really an adjournment, is it?
Yeah. All right. Item number 4, 6414BZ, 1320 East 23rd Street, Brooklyn.
That one, an adjournment was requested.
New cases, item number 5, 1636BZ, 1885 Westchester Avenue, the Bronx.
We approve a service of initial application and of notice of hearing to officials. I didn't see a community board recommendation. The variance expired in November of 2017, so we need proof of continuous use and substantial prejudice that would be suffered if the use is not permitted. I'd like information on compliance with the terms of the prior grant. They need to provide a photo verifying that the southern curb cut removal on White Plains Road was accomplished. I think they had shown that on the prior, but we need that because it was a condition, and it complies with C2 sign regulations. Sign drawings were provided, but we need, I guess it's a sign calculation sheet, and they need to provide lighting compliance drawings as was required at the prior review. The 2011 Certificate of Occupancy doesn't mention that this is a BSA grant or BSA action or the calendar number, only lists some of the conditions of the grant. This is a real problem with these new COs. There's sort of no place to indicate it, and I don't understand why the COs kind of streamlined to the point of leaving out important stuff. There is actually no place that indicates it's a CPC or a BSA action on the
Well, maybe with the
CO.
conditions, they can put just a calendar number on the.
Yeah, but so they didn't, so they put the conditions, and dumbly, it doesn't say whose conditions they are, or how you would even know to find it. The fence has graffiti on it and needs to be repainted and repaired. Trash enclosure doors should be replaced as they're collapsing and unsightly. The use is adjacent to commercial uses and a parking area, and it doesn't look like those little islands that are normally reserved for landscaping were shown to be such in the prior approval, but because the adjacencies are commercial and parking, it's less to protect. Commissioner Shanda's comments were provide an elevation. I'm not sure of what, I think there was one. Trash enclosure door needs repair, lumen analysis needs to be provided, graffiti on the fence needs to be removed, and prior signage analysis per street frontage is needed. Signage analysis is needed. Other comment?
Yes, they did provide a signage analysis per street frontage.
Oh, they
So
did?
that has been provided for 3 frontages, Westchester Avenue, White Plains Road, and Leland Avenue. So it must have been in a different folder in the computer, but
Okay.
it has been provided. As for continuous use,
And it shows that it complies with C2?
yes, it does. There's 40 square feet of illuminated square footage on Westchester, 40 square feet of illuminated square footage on White Plains, and 24 square feet of illuminated on Leland Avenue.
Okay.
As for proof of continuous use, although they do need to provide it, I just want to let you know, I passed this site numerous times, and it has always been occupied and operating with the gas station and also with the convenience store that features a Subway restaurant inside of it. I agree, I went to the site, and I agree with Vice Chair Chanda that there is graffiti on the fence in various places that needs to be removed, and definitely the trash enclosure door, as you said, does need to be repaired because it's all twisted and bent, like somebody hit it. And also, the curb cut, the southern curb cut on White Plains Road has been taken away and the sidewalk curb has been restored.
I share the same comments. In addition to that, I have a comment about clarifying the use on the northwest of the building. It appears that the building to the northwest is a residential building, but it's healthy that if somebody's is submitting to us to clarify about the surrounding uses.
It is commercial. There's a one-story, like,
Let him finish his sentence. Let's hear the rest of his statement, please.
Yeah, the one, I understand. The one at the lot line immediately adjacent is a residential, the one that's.
no, it's not residential. It's commercial.
It's a commercial?
Yeah.
Yeah, the one-story building, but there is one like that sit back.
Behind it.
Yes, it's like four-story building. I
Yes.
believe this is residential.
Yes, it is.
So my point is, if somebody's, while reviewing this, I will need to go to Google Zoom to the building, and sometimes I struggle guessing whether this is a residential building or a commercial building. When the applicant clarifies this, he actually helps me judging whether it's that way or the other way, and make like the appropriate comments on the case. So it helps us like.
The applicant
Pursue-
should clarify, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I got out of it is that there's a driveway that separates this site from the residential building.
Yes.
So that's why I said it's adjacent to parking as opposed, it seems like it's even almost treated like a drive-through.
I think he's speaking about the other side. So there's one side that does have that driveway, kind of like a drive-through, and then on the other side of the site, there's a one-story commercial building, then next to that, there's a residential.
Right, but I'm looking at this thing that drives all the way through. There seems to be adjacent to the property,
Yes,
a little
this is
commercial
right.
building, and then it's a pretty long, almost, it's like a street.
Yes.
It connects diagonally from White Plains to whatever that, Leyland.
I think there's a fence between these two lots here. But
There
this
is.
is
Yeah.
parking for this commercial use, and that's
Right.
parking for this commercial strip.
Right. But it seems like there's some serious distance between the commercial use and that residential building. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
That's
If
true.
you
Yes.
look at, yeah. Okay. Okay, any other comment?
The only thing I would add is, there are some cracks in the asphalt, they would be fixed up. Further, while there is a vacuum on the lot line, and it looks like an air on the lot line, it's right next to a train station. I'm not sure that this noise is going to be significant in any way.
Let me know when you're ready.
Okay.
Good?
And no one else has a problem with the clothing and shoe drop on, like, right near the sidewalk?
No, the
we have-
community board, let me, we don't have a community board comment on this one, right? I didn't see any comments about, we don't have a community board, so we don't know if it's considered a nuisance. Yeah. I don't know why, I'm gonna need to transfer this. 'cause
It's Monday.
I just can't get it to stop. Hold on one second, I need to save it to
Okay,
the
fine.
desktop.
Let me know when you're ready.
Okay, let's try that. Okay.
Ready? Mm-hmm. Okay. Item number 6, 4-00BZ, 243 West 30th Street, Manhattan. It's an extension of term for a PCE.
Yeah, so we have proof of service of initial application and of notice of hearing to officials. Notice of hearing was posted in the building lobby also. We do need community board recommendation. We have Department of Investigation. Drawings indicate in the chart that the size of the PCE is being reduced, or rather enlarged at the cellar and reduced at the first and mezzanine levels. I don't know whether, I don't really believe that was stated in the statement of facts, but they need to clarify the included areas on the main plans as opposed to on those little floor area drawings. The boiler room and super's office for the building are correctly being removed from the PCE area. They were included before, but that needs to be shown on the main set because those little floor area drawings don't get coordinated with DOB. Also, I'd like to understand the significance of the hatching in the corridors. For some reason, that's hatched and nothing else is. And they need to update the expired massage therapist licenses. Any other comments?
Is there a change? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I saw updated licenses. Oh, I see. The first one needs to be.
Yeah, there's
updated.
2 or 3 that are 19 expiration.
Yeah. I have no comments for this case.
All right,
Is
anybody
there a
else?
change in operator in this case?
Not that I know of, but it's a good question.
Why are we getting DOI
Oh,
if it's an extension of term?
that's a good question. A little bit of caution or something like that, it just goes out automatically and DOI sends its no concern report.
Is there any enlargement as well? Are they enlarging the?
No, so what they're doing is I understand what happened. On the initial, in the submission back in 2000, they measured the PCE incorrectly. They included the boiler room, the super's office, like all of this stuff that has nothing to do with the PCE. And this architect rightly is saying, wait a minute, those are building services, so the PCE is really X big instead of X plus Y, right? But the statement of facts didn't clarify that. It just kind of says it's an
It
extension.
just said, yes, the proposed enlargement, and when I read
Yes.
it, I was like, what?
Right, and it's not really true that it's an enlargement, actually, it's a reduction. It goes from a gross of 6,148 to 5,728. So,
Do we need to ask them to fix it, the statement of facts?
well, that's the thing, is the statement of facts are incorrect, so council, relies on everything matching, or they don't know the answer, so yes,
says
it
the
needs to be
proposed-
corrected.
Yeah, it says the proposed enlargement will not result in any additional new storefront space or signage.
That's probably a true statement, but the second part of it, but it isn't an enlargement.
Okay.
It's an enlargement at the first floor, at the cellar level for some reason, and they don't explain why. Because meanwhile, they took out boiler rooms, so they don't actually explain why it's an enlargement. And that's part of the confusion. Okay.
Move on.
Uh-huh.
Item number 7, 18513BZ, 97 Franklin Avenue, extension of time to complete construction.
Right, there's no notice requirements for extensions of time to complete construction. Holdup of the work on this site is the result of problems on the adjacent site affecting the ability to proceed with the project. I confirmed on Biz that there are significant problems at the adjacent property that started, I believe, in 2017, and a timeline for the work was provided, so I think it's a very legitimate reason. Any other comments?
Item number 8, 6215BZ, 139 Bay Street, Staten Island. This is also an extension of time to complete construction.
Correct, and there's no notice requirements for such extensions of time. This is a first request for an extension of time, but no work has been done at all at the site. No permits have been obtained, and it doesn't sound like they've even secured any kind of financing. We need some information on when this work will commence. The property also appears to be for sale. When I Google it, a lot of real estate agents show up. All violations against the property are related to an elevator. I don't even know if this building is being used for anything. So normally we want to cure the violations, but I think if the building is vacant, it's a different thing. It just needs to be maintained safely. So, yeah. Any other comment?
I don't know, I did like the language in the statement of facts. It's kind of, number one, it says to complete substantial construction, so they are
That's
asking
the
for.
rule, yeah, well, no, so it's true, they were supposed to obtain a C of O in 4 years instead of.
Yeah, or
right.
to complete construction, to complete substantial construction is kind of like,
Substantial construction is kind of a term of art that's used by cases. A lot of the zoning resolution refers to substantial construction, so,
but isn't it used for vesting? Like to vest somebody, he should have completed substantial.
yeah, it's used in vesting
This.
context, but it's also used by DOB to determine certain things about whether certain kinds of approvals can be issued. It's used by courts to determine whether there's, been a significant investment. I don't really have a trouble with the language. I have trouble with the fact that zero has been done on the site.
Yeah, and they
Right.
said, we're not gonna be doing anything actually until they are restructuring the owner is it's kind of like restructuring the company or the ownership.
Right.
And they said until the restructuring is done, we're not doing anything.
Doing anything,
Yeah.
but restructuring, I read, sell it, because I don't get the impression, they didn't give us anything to indicate that they have financing, that they pulled permits at the very least, that they pursued drawings, they did nothing.
Nothing towards the future of this site.
Right.
I don't, when I opened these statement facts, I only received 2 pages. Did you guys have more? to that?
Yeah, it's
It
still-
seemed like it was cut off at some point.
Oh. It seemed, it was brief, but
I thought it ended abruptly.
Uh-huh.
But I'm not.
I don't know, I need
reached
to
out
look
the
again,
case
yeah.
manager, And that was all they filed. So I'm not sure if that was the intention.
The statement of facts, you say is not complete?
I thought
It
it ended
seemed to-
abruptly. I didn't think that was the end of it, but it may very well be.
It's,
Yeah,
I
we can
believe
look at the
applicant
hard
is kind of new
They did
to
it.
us, maybe.
Oh, you did?
no.
So it's, yes, the statement of facts is kind of different
It's
from
skimpy.
other
Yeah.
statement of facts, but
If
it
it's-
was clear.
Clear, but didn't give us any information, so that's
Yeah.
not good.
You mean any evidence? I would say they didn't give us any clues that they are advancing the work at
Right.
the site.
Right,
But they gave the information they have so far.
yeah. Or they gave us the information they gave us.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's put it that way.
I
Okay.
mean, if we grant something like that, I just want to differentiate between somebody who's coming to the board, yeah, I got the permit, I started this, I arranged it for financing, and I need 4 years to complete construction. And this application who's coming to the board, and I need 4 years to complete substantial construction. And you know what, I'm restructuring my firm, and I have no intention to apply for a permit or prepare plans until I complete or finish the restructuring. I'm okay with granting because it's the first extension, but I believe the treatment, if they come back like for another extension, the treatment should be different for them from somebody else who was coming with a permit, who started construction, but he got some issues. I don't know how to implement this, but
I think that they have some explaining to do about what the future looks like, and from there we do.
Right. I do want to say, though, this is a very difficult site. It's not a vacant lot where you just like, what's the matter? Just build the thing. Or what's the matter? Just demolish it and build the thing. It's a very weird site. If you look at the building, it sits, it's sort of like this split-level building where the level of the roadway is at like the equivalent of the 4th floor, and then down at the cellar, which isn't really the cellar because it's all exposed, is down, I think, at railroad tracks or at a precipice that, so though it may have been premature in retrospect for them to have come to us for a variance because they didn't have all their ducks in a row, but maybe they had their ducks and the ducks, flew away, right? So because to find financing for such a difficult site means that you're finding a lender who's willing, say, arguably to take a risk on the construction perhaps, right? And the site itself is residential, is proposed to be residential, and whether it's a great choice, even though there's residential right down the street, but, yeah. So, it's not your easy peasy development site. So it's very possible, but they should explain that to us. They should say, at the time of the variance, we had it all lined up, we had everybody all excited to get going, and then X happened, right? Which is exactly what the prior applicant did. They said, all ready to go, and then the wall on the adjacent property collapsed and the place was condemned or whatever, right? It wasn't condemned, but still there was a partial vacate issued. You can't start construction when you have a collapse on the adjoining property, so.
I don't think we should prejudice this applicant going forward in 4 years, which is, I believe, what you suggested, because you don't know what's going to happen over the next 4 years. And so why would we put it in the resolution that we need to treat them a different way from anybody else who's coming for an extension of time to complete construction, when this is their first extension of time? And as the chair said, this is a complicated building. I'm not sure if you were here during the variance. It's a very complicated site. And so I'm not surprised that they're going to need at least one extension.
Yeah, but, I think we had this discussion on last week about, how long do these things get extended for? So if you're making no progress and you don't, and let's just say, if you're sitting back thinking, I'll go to the movies, maybe I'll go on a holiday, and then the next thing that happens is 4 years later, you haven't done anything, that's different than an active pursuit of development. So, and to see what that is and why it hasn't happened, because we have had one case where there was no pursuit whatsoever. They got the variance and they sat on it and they tried to flip the site and nobody wanted it, right? In this situation, I don't know that they're really trying to flip it. It seems like real estate agents notice when a site is not doing very well, and so they kind of voluntarily come in with a listing, whether or not the owner really is interested in selling or ready to sell or whatever. Okay.
Move on.
Yeah.
Item number 9, 2017-207BZ, 2030 Broadway, Manhattan, extension of time to obtain a C of O for a PCE.
Right. The
Previously-
last hearing was postponed, right?
They didn't do notice, or they didn't late, I think, I forgot.
But there are no notice requirements. This is an extension of time to obtain a CO, so I don't know why they didn't do notice. Yeah, so I don't know what the reason for the postponement was. The statement of facts speaks of the PCE in the future tense, but this was a legalization, so they need to clarify. Given this is a PCE in a mixed-use building with residents above, and assuming that it's operating, the neighbors should be notified of this hearing. These are comments from the last review session, and I'm curious why no notice was given to the lobby. The applicant needs to verify, there was no change to the application, right? The applicant should verify that the ownership hours, operations, sprinklers, and occupancies of the PCE is the same as it was when the PCE was approved. Fire department needs to take a look, may have done so already, but it's not in the folder. And because, and my question also was, this is an application to extend the time to obtain a CO, and I asked, as I'm asking on all these large buildings, is that actually reasonable, where you've got outstanding alteration applications and violations that are affecting the entire building? How can a PCE get a C of O, right? So, last I looked, there was a stop work order against this property and many open ECB violations. So how can you expect the PCE to get a CO at all, ever?
Okay.
So maybe it's not a reasonable request, and it was something we were talking about before, whether partial COs or TCOs are available, but at the moment, we don't know what the process is with DOB.
I have a question. They were preparing to submit the PW1 as of September 23rd, 2019. So can they update us on whether or not they have submitted it?
The PW1 for,
Isn't that for the C of O?
okay. All right, so in other words, you just want to know what the status of the CO application is, but
Yeah.
they're not going to be able to get anything. That's kind of the point. You can submit all you want. Okay.
Item number 10, 2017-247BZ, 1367 East 24th Street, Brooklyn.
Okay, we just received, I believe, proof of notice of hearing, but I don't know that we received proof of service of initial application. So if somebody could check that proof of notice, I just saw that it came in just now.
Yeah, this morning I saw it. I had emailed her last week, but then Henry had also emailed her. So that proof of service came in this morning.
Right, but I need to make sure it's both notice of hearing and service of initial, neither of which were submitted with the application. I don't know why this person waits until they're asked. With this one, I want the architect and the owner to attend the hearing.
Architect and owner? Okay.
Yeah. The statement of fact states that the building floor area was reduced by 8 square feet, although there was no bulk modification. What changes to the project account for this, this change in number, because they claim there's no change in bulk? The notes that are on the proposed plans need to be the same notes that appear on the approved plans, in particular, the zoning information that's on P1 on the approved plans, but all the same notes have to appear. I didn't find in all of the drawings that were submitted any existing building plans against which it's possible to compare the removal of existing walls. I don't believe that the bay window that is now proposed as retention goes to the floor of the first floor, hence cannot count as floor area for retention purposes. I'm sure we had a long discussion about that with the previous architect, and I don't really want to have this argument again. The bay windows need to go to the floor in order to count as floor area. Plus, the proposed demolition and existing first floor diagrams don't match each other and don't match the proposed first floor plan at the area around the bay window for material to be retained. So I actually looked at, and there's 3 different plans, all for that same area. To make the demolition plans more understandable, they should be dimensioned so that you need to dimension the entirety of the walls so that it's clear that the dimensions for the walls claimed to be retained add up to total lengths. For example, a 6'3" retained section of a 41'3" wall, I like to know how is that 16'3" calculated if you don't know what the balance of the wall is, right? It's just a floating wall in the middle of we don't know what. I have similar comments about the bay window on the second floor, but also how did the existing wall become longer on that floor than was shown by the previous architect? Previous architect showed 13'10" for that wall, and now it's 14'8". And ditto for existing walls at the attic, and comparison to prior approval and within the proposed drawing set. Everything's different. And again, this is like what I say, isn't existing? How can existing shift from being one kind of an existing to another kind of existing? In the attic level, the elevator stop is not being counted as floor area, it seems, when it's floor area and was on the prior approval. They need to provide floor area calculation diagrams to clarify what's the floor area, because it's just kind of statements and we don't have anything on which to base it, and you need those floor area calculation diagrams. Any other comments?
I didn't understand what the height change was with the roof.
So the top-off height is the same,
Top-off.
but it went from being like a peaked roof to having little gables so that you have dormers. and that makes it much more difficult to understand where you've got your 8-foot height clearances, you know, where you have areas that are going to count towards floor area, because some are dormers with much higher ceilings, and some is in underneath a low roof. It just makes it harder to understand. Okay.
Appeals calendar, continued hearing items, item number 11, 2018-198A. This is being adjourned.
Yes.
Item number 12, 2019-172A, 10 McGuire Court, Staten Island.
Okay. I thought the submission was quite strange. We asked that the architect establish that the building complies with R3-2 regulations as they existed prior to the zoning map change. The submission lists some of the applicable zoning regulations in what looks to me like haphazard fashion, and doesn't show on any drawings that the project is compliant with all of these, except for providing some really unrelated axonometrics that attempt to show compliance with, I guess, the sky exposure and front yard setback requirements, but not in any kind of technical, formal way. I really wish the applicant's representative would have looked at these drawings before submitting them, and maybe recognized that they were weird, and perhaps asked our project manager if they would be okay to submit before submitting them. As to these drawings, they seem to establish that the building complies with the R3X height and setback regulations, which is what we discussed at the last hearing. And so perhaps the only real issue as to serious loss is the rear yard setback, which is what we said at the last hearing. But the goal of these drawings was to show that the project complies with the prior zoning, not the scope of serious loss, because we'd already said removing that section in the rear yard was enough to establish serious loss. It was that we didn't want to approve a non-complying building, right? So I have to say, in the absence of a set of drawings specifically showing compliance with the R3-2 regulations that were applicable at the time of vesting, all I can suggest is that we grant the vesting with clear instructions to DOB that this is a conditional grant, as opposed to just a grant, and that DOB must audit and verify that the project complies with all relevant zoning regulations that were current as of the 2002 rezoning to R3X, prior to the rezoning.
Prior to the rezoning.
Yeah, because we can't get that information from the applicant, so DOB really needs to do an audit. I don't want to be responsible for them going forward with a non-complying building. Like, maybe it is. Like, DOB was non-committal in the status of the permit, right? It wouldn't say that it was a valid permit. So it seems to be confused by the timeline of events. So I think we clarified the timeline. The only thing that matters is, was it a legal structure in 2001 and a half, you know? Other comments?
Zoning calendar, continued hearing items, item number 13, 2017-34BZ, 311 Adams Avenue, Staten Island.
No cover letter was provided to explain the submissions. The submission comes after a dismissal warning letter was sent by the BSA to owner and applicant following the last adjournment in October. We last heard this exactly 1 year ago. Although we were informed that a new architect was being engaged, and apparently was, there is absolutely no difference in the design between last year's and this one. It's just that it was redrawn by the new architect, copied it. So a title company submitted deed information to establish separate ownership from the adjoining lot since 1961. At that last hearing, we had many questions that remain unanswered. The principal principal one being the absence of a clear uniqueness argument. Applicant has to make the argument and listen to the comments from the January 2019 hearing and review session. There is also a study of 5 vacant lots, none of which are described as buildable since they're located in the bed of map streets. Is this supposed to be the uniqueness study? All of these sites could apply for GCL 35 waivers to cure their conditions, or they are better off than this site since this one can be built without a GCL waiver, since the building floor plate sits outside of the mapping line. So I don't really understand what that uniqueness argument or that map was supposed to be doing, because it wasn't accompanied by any discussion. Nonetheless, this is a relatively unbuildable lot. It's an unbuildable lot due to yard setback requirements, so it's a different thing, which is different than unrelated to whether there is a street mapping, right? It has to do with yard requirements on the size of the lot. The proposed drawings don't indicate where the requested front yard waivers are and should for clarity, although the as-of-right does show them. They should put it on the proposed drawings. Also, since this site is in a flood zone, mitigation requirements apply where the house is lifted more than 5 feet above curb. Inability to mitigate is described in the floor zone analysis, but no DOB objection is provided for it. It's 6461 and 64621. The site is in a lower density growth management area. There's no mention of this on the drawings or in the zoning analysis. It's also in the coastal zone, so may need waterfront resiliency review by city planning. The roof is not shown as occupiable, yet it's very high at 8 feet to the rafters. The collar ties in the attic are being used to artificially create structural headroom to 4'11", so as not to count as floor area. The roof has to be brought down to comply with the floor area proposed. We discussed this a year ago. We also asked for a study about parking lots, the 2 parking lots in the front yard, and asked why parking couldn't be in the side yard instead, which would prevent the need for some of the waiver for flood zone mitigation. So you could put planting or a balcony or something that has to do with the lifting. Also, section 23-631 of the zoning resolution says that perimeter wall height is measured off of base flood elevation, not freeboard. So a maximum of 21 feet off base flood or 26 feet off grade, whichever is greater. So the calculations are wrong on the drawings. I think actually though it still works based on the 26 feet off grade, but not based on the measurements provided on the section. Sections show that grade is at elevation 9 feet, while the survey shows it is between 7 and 8 feet. So if that were the case, then it wouldn't work because it's more than 26 feet off grade. So they have to provide a clarification, and perhaps the mistake is one is not an NAVD 88, might be in Queens Datum, but they need to verify that it takes somebody's attention to this project and no one's paying attention to the project. Furthermore, I don't see how the allowable FAR exceeds 0.5 since the top occupiable floor is under an attic and not under a sloping roof, or if that's permissible, if DOB considers that the sloping roof, even though you're not under it. The drawings don't show the roof has a rise to run of 7 and 12. Instead, it shows it at 12 to 14, which doesn't comply. And there is no additional 300 square foot allowance absent a garage in the side lot ribbon, so you don't get to count that. It isn't clear whether the project is proposing to use more than 0.5 FAR, though. That's something I just wasn't really clear about. Floor area calculations are confusing as they are described as gross and net. That they need to show what the zoning floor area is. Then I have comments from Commissioner Shanda. Narrower lot uniqueness analysis provided. All of the sites identified are located in the bed of map streets and would require discretionary action to develop. Will not facilitate it as of right except for site number 5. She was okay with the uniqueness findings. Proposed building has to comply with the current flood regulation. The proposed building is in contact with the built form, which consists of homes built over raised cellar, and thinks it's the minimum variance that's being requested. Floor zoning, I don't understand this one, something about maybe flood zoning compliance. Don't know whether we received that. I think we did. Okay, other comments?
No comments.
Okay, anybody else?
No further
No.
comments. Thank you.
Item number 14, 2018 56BZ, 83 Coleridge Street, Brooklyn, is being withdrawn.
Yes.
Item number 15, 2019 22BZ, 2447 95th Street, Queens.
They provided proof of individual ownership since 1961. The typo in the statement of facts doesn't state whether it's a 10-foot required yard, is front or otherwise. It just says there's a 10-foot required yard, but we don't know which one. To clarify, the statement of facts contradicts the requested floor area by 1 foot. Rounding it up, it is 1,226 square feet, and it's incorrect. It doesn't coordinate in the different places. It says 1225 in other places and decimals in others. I still don't find a uniqueness argument. The chart in the statement of facts and 400-foot area map shows 20 lots of similar width to the proposed. There is no mention of vacant lots, however. Would the site be unique as to vacant lots? There's no discussion about that. The argument for waiver of side yard regulations is understood, but I don't understand the argument for an increase in floor area from the 0.5 allowable to 0.66. I think all of the requested changes have been made to the massing of the project, actually, but the drawings don't show anywhere where the required yard regulations are or the required floor areas, heights, etc. They need to show that. And there's a chain link fence that's located in the middle of the sidewalk, which is on city property. That's not permitted and needs to be removed from the drawing, as was previously discussed. I understand that everybody else has one, but that doesn't give you the right to have it unless you can establish that as some kind of grandfathered condition, and it's not our domain. Commissioner Shonda's comments, she was satisfied with the revised roof line, thinks it meets all the findings, only a narrow vacant lot, okay. Anybody else?
No comment.
I wasn't able to find, or maybe I wasn't able to open it up, but was the drainage issue adequately addressed?
Because the community board had an issue with the drainage, right?
And I think that one of our instructions was that an architect was to address drainage, and I didn't see anything that.
Oh, it was the community board may not be paved over to prohibit open green space. They don't want the front yard paved over. Yeah, my notes don't have much on the subject of drainage, right? Yeah, so the 2013 variance had an issue about aligning with the front wall of the adjacent building, which they did now. And the other issue was about drainage of the site so as not to impact the neighbor, right? That's not being addressed anywhere. Correct, yeah. All right.
Move on.
Uh-huh.
Item number 16, 2019 39BZ, 2311 East 4th Street.
I want the architect and owner to attend this hearing. As requested, a full zoning analysis was provided on the drawings that cites to the applicable sections in the zoning resolution and states what the compliances and non-compliances are. It does not state, however, that this is in the Special Ocean Parkway District. I don't think there are any sections in the chapter that affect the project, but that's an oversight by the architect and the applicant to fail to mention it because it's the zoning district that applies. Floor area diagrams were also provided as requested. The attic floor plan doesn't match the floor area diagram. Dimension the attic plan to match it, but at what height is the plan section taken? Not all of the roof area. So it acts as if there's no walls. I see this sometimes, right? A roof plan, an attic plan is actually a horizontal section through the building. And at a certain point, the horizontal section hits a wall. And you render it as a wall. You don't render it as nothing. It hits solid stuff, right? It hits structure. And then, if you're now looking down on the roof, that's what's rendered in plan as the roof. Instead, this just sort of disappears into a roof. So this one is only treating what's floor area, I guess, as being in the attic. But meanwhile, there are other things that's below the eave line that's inside the attic level. So if the roof section is taken at a level of 4 feet off the floor, you have to show everything you can see from 4 feet looking down. And that wasn't done, which makes these plans very hard to understand because it's as if there's no structure. It's like kind of magic up there. There were very helpful drawings of the shoring. Those should be included in the main set. The shoring has to do with the fact that to avoid this being basically a demolition of a building, they're going to have to be shoring up the existing walls and joists. And the idea is to change the elevations of the joists. And this is one of the things that's so
the notice of
disagreeable
shoring
about
plan-
this special permit
So
because.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Madam Chair. So the shoring plan should be included should we
Yes,
approve this?
it need to be part of the main set because
Okay.
that's the instruction to DOB about how to make sure that this is not a tear down.
Okay.
I'd like to say that going forward, so this was a very good set of drawings by this architect, which I'm not frankly used to seeing. Going forward, this architect and applicant should understand that the quality, detail, and information provided on this drawing set with this submission are the minimum standard to be submitted to this agency. I say that because we get this quality of drawing from almost everybody else. And it's been difficult to get this quality from this architect. The direction at the last hearing was to pull the second floor further back, which was done. However, the lot coverage remains at nearly 50%, and the direction was to reduce it to 48%, which would in turn have lowered the floor area to something closer to the largest building on the block, which is 5,200 square feet. At 5,800 square feet, the proposed is not within the character, although the last changes, which included reducing the roof height, were helpful in improving that. And I think you could probably accomplish the reduction in lot coverage to a large extent easily enough by eliminating, there's this 2-foot 6-inch bump out at the first floor rear, which would not affect the upper floors and just makes it a straight line wall instead of a kind of an unnecessary bump out, and would reduce the lot coverage and some of the floor area. And just an observation, really, this is more of a design observation, but the entry condition is really odd in this building. It has you falling over the first step as you come into the stair hall from the foyer. It's like you open the door, you hang up your coat, and you trip over the stairs that go upstairs. Seems like instead you would switch the closet to the other side and move the door to the other side of the entry hall. It's just, I observed what I consider to be a defect in the planning. It's not my business if you want your client to fall up the stairs, but, you know. Okay, anybody else, any other comments?
No comment.
Item number 17, 2019-48 BZ, 3145 41st Street, Queens.
Okay. It would have helped the commissioners very much if the cover letter were more specific about the purpose of the supplied materials, so that we don't have to figure out where the information has been added. If information has been added, because that's the thing, you don't know what you're looking for. You're given a new statement of facts and you don't know why. So I'm going to go over the requests that we had at the last hearing, which would have been a checklist for the applicant to just go through the checklist and say, this is where I answered that question and this was the answer. So we asked at the last hearing for a map to support the claim that no other house in the study area has side yards. This was actually done, but it doesn't actually prove that concept, which I'll talk about later. We also asked that the study area be increased to 1,000-foot radius, which was done. We also asked for a map that shows the widths of houses and yards. That was done, but it didn't have a backup that shows totals and tabulations, so it's really just a map, and then some houses are blue and some aren't blue, and you see a lot of blue or not a lot of blue or something, right? So we don't really know what to do. We also asked that the as-of-right should show what an addition to the existing back building would look like. That was done, and there's a lot of limitations on what could be added, so it became clear that there's no as-of-right with the existing back building. We also asked that the proposed should show the abutting building, and that the proposed complies with abutting building regulation 23-49. It does with respect to the percentage of wall that abuts the abutting building, or is abutted by the abutting building. The title blocks were clarified. The 100-square-foot exemption in an R5 was clarified. They did not explain why a two-family semi-attached with shallower side yard wouldn't be viable. That was something we specifically asked. We specifically asked for them to provide drawings to show the proposed in context with the neighborhood. They didn't provide that. Instead, the building is a standalone in sort of a kind of a mini rendering. We asked whether Section 23-461 waiver is needed. And if so, we need that waiver from DOB. That one, I find there's a misunderstanding by the architect about what 2349 is. So Section 2349 is the abutting building rule, and that's what DOB objected to. It has two parts to it. It says first that if you're abutting, you need to abut the adjoining building by a certain percentage of the adjoining
depth or
building.
something, right?
The second thing it says is, for such buildings containing residences, this is 2349, the side yard requirement shall be waived along the side lot line of the zoning lot coincident with the abutting building. It doesn't waive any side yard regulations. And it also says, and one side yard shall be provided along any side lot line of the zoning lot without an abutting building with a width of at least 8 feet in an R31. I think this is an R31. So that's the section that DOB is saying is not complied with, and that's the objection. If the architect is concerned that they're also not complying with 23-461, which is the simple side yard regulations, then we'd need a second DOB objection. But the only DOB objection was as to 2349, and arguably, since we're talking about an abutting building, it seems to me that should be sufficient, but it wouldn't be the first time where DOB asks for compliance with two sort of parallel sections. Let's see. We did get confirmation that the site is not in a predominantly built-up area. the 100 square foot floor area exemption that was clarified only applies to floor area in individual garages. This site doesn't have an individual garage, so you don't get that. And missing from the list of requests, which we requested, as I said, the building in context. And then I want to say that the lot width study map that was provided shows many lots that are 16 to 17 feet wide with 0 lot line buildings, and the other BSA case cited by the applicant approved a 17-foot wide building, which is why we asked, why can't you have a 3 or 4 foot side yard, so at least you can get access to your side yard, and then it makes this site like other buildings in the area. And again, those maps that were provided, I don't think actually prove their point. What they do is they indicate there are approximately as many 21-foot wide and less buildings with side yards as without, which contradicts the statement in the statement of facts at page 6, which claims that there are only 2 such lots with side yards. There's like a complete disconnect between statement of facts and that map. I assume that the person who wrote the statement of facts didn't look at the map. It's the only thing you can conclude. And then the comment from Commissioner Shonda is it meets the findings and the request is minimal, consistent with character. Other comments?
I had a similar question about the E finding. We originally wanted to know what the average width of the street wall of the adjacent homes were, and we've got a really convoluted study, but it doesn't seem to answer the basic question, which is what is the average building width for lots that are 21 foot wide or smaller? That still
Right.
remains a question because it focused on, the lots as in general, providing 0 side yards, but you really don't know how wide those lots were and how wide the buildings were. And we wanted to know what was livable in terms of a width, and we didn't get that answer.
Right. And for me, if you just sort of look at the brute data, it proves that you can have a 17-foot wide house, so therefore we get, a 3 or 4 foot wide yard, which is a good thing, because it means you don't have to trespass on your neighbor's property in order to get to your yard. Other comments?
Item number 18, 2019-75 BZ, 704 Broadway, Manhattan.
Okay, I think all of our concerns were addressed, but we still need DEP and DOT sign-off and a certificate of no effect from LPC. I didn't find anything from LPC, and DOT had comments in December about reverse journey to work, census data, and modal splits. And DEP had air quality, noise, and EAS comments in October, at the end of October. So I don't see anything in the folder that indicates they submitted, or anyway, that
704 Broadway?
that they got sign off. And then we also have a November 19th conditional DEP sign off on hazmat. So I want to just draw council's attention that it's a conditional sign off on hazmat, so, okay. Okay, no, I was just saying, I don't think we have DOT or DEP sign off
No.
on air quality, noise.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, open hazmat, last
Oh.
time I checked, we were waiting for the phase 2 report. And then
No, we have 1119 conditional sign off on the hazmat, that's what I
They
have.
approved the work plan and
Oh, the
hazmat
work,
level
oh.
19.
Okay, work plan,
So now they're probably doing the phase 2 testing.
okay,
And then we have open air quality and noise. We received
Right.
comments October 30th, and I still haven't seen a response.
okay.
And for DOT, we did receive some comments from DOT, and we have not received a response.
Okay. Those are the comments about reverse journey to work and
Yes.
like that, yeah, okay. Good, okay, thanks.
Item number 19, 2019-158BZ, 8903 57th Avenue, Queens.
The applicant indicates by submitting to us a quote that they got at the very end of January to purchase concrete waste containers with plastic tops, which was something we discussed at the last hearing, but they didn't purchase them, it's just an estimate. But what about the compactor, which was a big subject of discussion, and was a condition of the prior approval? And the increased frequency in trash pickups that we discussed at the last two hearings, and the trash enclosure door, not a mention of any of those things. And what about the landscaping? No mention. And the chain link fence at the rear, we discussed that at the last hearing. Was it replaced with PVC picket all the way along? Because there was a point at which it changes, right? And what about acoustical information about the menu board? The sound drawings show 54 dBA over the property line. And why would the menu board need to project anywhere except directly into the car window at 36 to 40 inches above grade? Are the measurements based on modeling or actual field data? Revision clouds on the drawings show almost no change in the drawings, so I don't even think there was any difference in what we got the last time and what we have now. As this was an incomplete submission, I consider this really a waste of the board's time when we get submissions like this. And also, are the lighting drawings based on measurements or modeling assumptions? Light levels are still high, close to the property line. They need to be 0 at the property line, not 0 X feet over the property line. And those were my comments. Any others?
The vice chair had a comment about
same.
revising the trash pickup schedule and providing that, and to confirm whether or not the gates to the trash enclosure were put back in place. And I have no additional comments.
Okay. Anybody else?
No, they haven't provided much that you can like comment on it.
Comment, yeah. I mean, it really was an incomplete submission, and I don't understand why. Okay. Okay.
New cases, item number 1, 2018-146BZ, 1315 East 24th Street, Brooklyn. Special permit for single-family home enlargement.
Yes. We have proof of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors, and have proof of service of initial application to officials. Community Board recommends approval. We have 3 letters in support. This is in part a request to legalize the rear yard incursion. As a threshold question, existing walls to be retained cannot include the illegal addition. I don't know if they do, but they cannot. They need to show the dimensions of the existing walls to remain on the proposed drawings. These dimensions should match the existing and demolition drawings. The ask at 1.06 FAR is too large. It needs to be brought down to 1.00000 FAR, which is 4,000.00000 square feet, okay? I say that because a lot of people don't seem to know decimal points are additional. Provide lot coverage information about this proposal, since the radius map is based on lot coverage and not open space ratios, so just so we can easily understand what we're looking at on that map. There's a typo in the statement of facts. If the rear yard is existing at 20 foot 9 inches and goes to 20 foot 4 inches, that is an increase in the size of the rear yard, not a decrease. It's a decrease in the size of the request, if that's what was meant, but it's an increase in the size of the yard. But if that's the illegal condition, then it's actually not an increase or a decrease. It's removing an illegal condition, and that's that. There's a hatched area on the attic plan that should be explained, and explain the section on P15, which appears to be providing headroom far in excess of 8 feet along the entire attic plan. It is floor area if there is headroom, and you can't artificially reduce it by adding unnecessary structure, which we see attempted, but it's not okay. I'd also like to know the justification for the 24-foot, 4-inch rear yard for 3 stories. Adjacent properties have complying or close to complying rear yards, and it's unknown from the study how many stories these are, so I don't think you can justify that. 3-story reduction in yard, and not sure that you can have a bedroom with legal light and air that faces onto a 4-foot wide side yard. I don't think that's permitted by building code, much less zoning. I don't know whether zoning regulates it, but pretty sure building code does. Okay. Any other comments?
I know what the board,
Yep.
Say?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to know what the board felt about how this site fell in line with the surrounding community.
I see. I need to look at, usually it has to do with height. I think I didn't have an issue with it because of the height, but I'll look again. Did you have a comment?
It seemed like while there are large homes on that lot, this one seemed particularly large with relation to the properties adjacent to it.
You mean bulk-wise or height-wise?
Both-wise.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunately the result of most of these special permits, right? That they are doubling the floor area. Yeah. And nobody, let's say, most adjoining houses don't have double the floor area.
There's a typo in the statement of facts. In the table that's provided on page 1, it says open space. It should say open space ratio, and it says open space is 1.5 minimum, should be 150. And
Yes,
then existing is 178, that's okay. And then proposed, I believe it's 24.8, it's not 248, I guess.
say it again, 242,
It says 248. If you look at the proposed open space on page 1 in the statement of facts.
it says 248 what?
It should be a percentage, but it doesn't say that.
Ah.
So the table should read this, open space ratio percentage. And then instead of 1.5, it should be 150.
50, right.
Second cell should be 178. And I believe the third cell, the proposed, the correction is 24.8. It cannot be 248%.
Right. Okay. All right, I don't know. Okay, so let's just say we need to correct that chart, okay.
I see that gallery's running in.
Huh?
Where is that? I don't know where it is. On the bottom somewhere. It's the clock, it's the timer, for some reason. It keeps going off.
Oh, is that what it is?
Sorry.
Okay, ready for the
Sorry.
20.
Item number 2, 2019-72BZ, 555 10th Avenue, Manhattan. This is a PCE.
Right, we have proof of service of initial application to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. We also have proof of posting of notice of hearing in the lobby. Community Board recommends approval. We have DOI sign off and a fire department letter of no objection. I see that DOB issued an objection, and hence the applicant is before this board, but I actually don't see why this wouldn't be an accessory facility, since it's only available to building residents. I actually don't understand this. Yeah, I find it curious, is it because it's operated by a commercial operator? Aren't all accessory gyms operated by an outside operator, and DOB doesn't get involved in the who's the operator? It's just curious, because there's so many gyms in apartment buildings, and some of them charge and some of them don't charge, but that's, again, outside of DOB's domain.
But I always thought if it was an in-house accessory to the use of the residential, if the residential tenants only used it and no outside people came in, why is it here?
That's why I'm asking. I don't
Yeah.
understand why it's here at all.
Yeah,
And so,
I didn't get that.
And, then they have to explain about the outdoor amenity space that's adjacent, that's only for the residents, et cetera. I don't understand why it's being complicated like this. But here it is before us, unless they can persuade DOB that it shouldn't be, because again, they have to come back to us every 10 years, right? Unless they have plans to ultimately open it up, but I don't see why, because it's in the middle of the building. So, then you'd have strangers coming to the 9th floor of your building, so I also don't get that. So anyway, I'd like to understand about this outdoor amenity space. Is it accessed by those residents who are not a member of the gym? Is there a way to get to it where you don't have to go through the gym? And are all residents gym members, or do you have to enroll in it or pay a separate fee, therefore show your membership card? I'm asking that because the amenity space is adjacent to the gym, and so if the only way to get to it is to go through the PCE, then it's harder to say it's not related to the PCE, and then we have a problem because it's a rooftop amenity space. Rooftop PCE. Then the other question is, this is in terms of disturbance to the upstairs residents. The section shows a mechanical crawl space over a portion of the activity rooms. I'd like to know if it's mechanical crawl space everywhere or just in a spot. And the swimming pool space has, the way it's shown in section, there seems like there's this decorative high ceiling that doesn't have a mechanical crawl space. So swimming pools famously produce huge echo. And so that could be a noise source. So what are they doing there to deaden the echo? We also need a first floor plan to show ADA access from the first floor and fire department fire egress to the street. So just emergency fire egress to the street. How does it get out? We don't have a first floor plan. That's always required. Everyone should note that. All the PCEs, we need a first floor drawing that shows access and egress, okay? Anybody else on this?
I had a question as to whether or not this was a legalization, and if so, when did it open? And that's based on the pictures submitted for the fire safety, showing the fire alarm system and the sprinkler system. And I agree with you, there should be more detail as to the sound attenuation.
Anybody else?
Item number 3, 183, BZ 200 West 41st Street, Manhattan. This is also an application for PCE.
I think this is a legalization. We have, and it wasn't mentioned at all in the submission, and the last time there was a submission was in November, so. So we have proof of service of, which by the way was after the Acoustalog letter was written, so they must have known it was a legalization. We have proof of service of initial application to officials and proof of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. Community board waived its recommendation. It's the Acoustalog letter for me that was the tip-off that's dated October 31st that indicates this is a legalization. They need a first floor plan again to show access from the street and to elevators or ADA access and egress from the third floor out to the street. Details for acoustical materials and so on are not keyed to the plan to show where the spring platform is located, and the ceiling isn't insulated anywhere, it looks like. According to the Acoustalog report, the heavy bags are hung from a freestanding structure that is bolted to the floor, hence vibration will transfer to the floor and connecting walls and columns. Acoustalog had recommendations for this area and also against weight drops and what they described as the loud rumbling of the treadmills, audible from the floor below. I don't see that these measures were indicated on the drawings. And if they are, because I don't see any details really on them, Acustalog needs to review them and sign off on them. So we need them much more involved in this because it's clearly creating noise and vibration. We don't have DOI as far as I could tell, and we don't have fire department yet on this. Anybody else?
I also questioned whether or not it was legalization, and the tip-off for me were the photos that were submitted showing the photos of Mayweather in the window, and also a site visit that also validated the fact that those photos are in the window.
Fire department has no objection.
Okay. We received the LNO from them?
Excuse me?
So we have an LNO,
Yeah.
right?
They said that they have a combination fire suppression system, standpipe and sprinkler, and fire alarm system as inspected by FDNY.
Okay.
And so they have no objection, and they'll continue to inspect. It's Mayweather Boxing and Fitness.
Right.
To occupy the third floor.
I was also concerned as to whether or not this was a legalization, but when I checked the website, it does say pre-order for your pre-opening fees, so get your pre-opening rates. I would assume that perhaps it's still not open. Or
It
the
could be a
website's not
soft
updated.
open or something like that. That's another, yeah.
I agree with the chair regarding the concern from the acoustical measures taken. I believe they are counting on the fact that the building doesn't have residential in it, but I believe even with a commercial building, if it has office on top, like above or below, and they have noise issues, it's gonna impact their operation. So I believe they need to be more careful describing the operation as quiet. They said, they actually described the operation as quiet operation, and they said somebody will supervise the trainers, or so will supervise the patrons during the activity, and like prevent weight drops from so high. I believe measures like that do not work.
And the Acustalog report said there was loud rumbling from the use of not very many treadmills. If you look at the plan, there's only about 6 treadmills or something like that. So imagine loud rumbling from treadmills. And then it also showed when they did the weight drop tests that the measurement spiked. And also when they had, I think they had a heavy bag punching also. And that was before the racks are actually bolted to the ground. So once they're bolted, there's even more contact and transfer of the vibration.
I got the feeling that they are attributing the like monitored noise because the fixation wasn't that perfect. So they sound like they are saying it vibrated a little bit because it's not rigidly connected to the floor. But I believe if it is rigidly connected to the floor, the vibration travel would be much easier than if it looks.
Super easy, yeah. Okay.
Item number 4, 2019-254BZ, 415 Red Hook Lane, Brooklyn. This is an application for a PCE also.
And also a legalization. We have proof of service of initial application to officials and proof of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. This is PCE in a residential building, and I didn't see proof of notice posted in the lobby.
They weren't allowed to post it.
Oh, well, they'll explain it to us, but they can't, so then they have to advise the neighbors somehow. You can't have no advice to the neighbors, right?
Stick under their door or something, is that acceptable to you?
Yeah, I mean, if it's such a, what kind of building is this? They weren't allowed to post it, that doesn't make any sense. It sounds more like they need to talk to management and let management know that there's and, sorry, can't.
Project manager, come in. Can't hear you on the record, sorry. You okay?
Yeah, the manager wouldn't let them post it. They gave it to the doorman, and the building manager said they wouldn't allow it. It's a partial mixed-use building, residential and commercial.
Yes, but it's residential is the point. So we couldn't submit something on government letter saying that they're required to notify the residents, something like that, because you can't, this smacks a little bit of management is in control of the commercial space. We've had this, right, where management's interests are different than the residents' interests, right? So one option is that that's another way of doing it. We just find out who the names of the residents are on all those floors, and the notice is mailed to them.
Okay, mailed
Right.
notices.
Hold on a second. So Community Board waived its recommendation. We do have DOI. In this case, also, the photos show the bags are hanging from the first floor ceiling. So those are also punching bags. They're not heavy bags. It's another kind of a bag, but they like fly all over the place when you hit them. So I'd like to know how the vibration from these bags is being isolated from residential uses above. They look like they're just bolted into the concrete without any kind of isolators. So,
I believe they have some sort of springs or so. I believe they talked about springs.
right, but that's so that the punching bag moves nicely, not so that it isolates the sound.
Yes, the sound, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Anybody else?
Item number 5, 2019-268BZ, 1938 Coney Island Avenue, Brooklyn. This is a special permit for a parking reduction.
All right. We have proof of service of the initial application to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. Community Board recommends disapproval, but the active PDF they supplied is inactive in the PDFs that I have, so I can't read the rest of the comments. It's got like a little scroll down, and when they send it to us, they inactivate the PDF, so you can't see the rest of the story. So that's a
They may
problem.
have scanned it or made a copy.
Yeah, whatever it is they did, they take away the story, so we don't know what their objections are.
They flatten it, actually.
Yeah.
There is a command in PDF called flatten. If you save and flatten, all the enabled stuff just
Right.
go
right.
away.
So I don't know so I'd love to hear the rest, because then they'd give us more information. We have one letter of, it's hard to know whether it's objection support, but they're concerned about being involved in the parking discussion. They sort of just wanted to be involved, I think. It's a little hard to understand that objection or support letter. There are open ECB violations and fines owed that need to be paid prior to our making a decision. Do have to say what I don't like about this application is that it appears to have been planned and pursued to come to the BSA after the structure was mostly completed and with the core conveniently located to prevent any expansion of the parking area and the cellar below the parking unexcavated, even though there was little actual intention to rent out all of the floor area on the upper floors to a community center that has limited parking requirement. It seems like it was planned to sort of set this up, right? Proof of this suspicion is the two prominently displayed leasing signs that are on photographs provided to us by the applicant that says, quote, Class A space built to suit, office space, 2,000 to 35,000 square feet. That offer is confusing also, since commercial use is limited to 2 FAR or 16,000 square feet, and 4,800 square feet of that commercial space is in retail on the first floor. So basically, they're they're advertising this as an entirely commercial building, which leads me to believe they want to put, ambulatory care facility in the balance of it, et cetera, et cetera. So, and they're kind of like forcing us, because it's a built building, to accept this. I'm also confused by the 8 quadruple stacker proposal that arrives at 32 spaces in among the stackers, because there's one extra space that's at grade by itself, since the section through the building shows only 24 foot 6 inches to the underside of the structure on the first floor parking area, and the cut sheet for the stackers that they provided shows you need 22.3 feet to handle a triple stacker and 29 feet to handle a quadruple stacker, where you only have 24 foot 6 inches to the underside of the structure. And the structure is a little bit like a cantilever, so it seems like you really do need a big beam. I
don't think it's a cantilever.
Not there's some columns.
They have some columns in between the stackers.
Yeah, okay, so, but meanwhile, I don't even know how they do that, because the stackers are on structure, and how do you fit the structure, the stackers around structure, anyway, whatever, that's their problem, but I don't see where they have the height. Not to mention that this very tall, and this is part of what's disagreeable about this application, the building is very tall in this very low-scale neighborhood, taking advantage of the 4.8 FAR, because you get to use that when you have community facility, right? So the whole thing seems disingenuous in its initial application. But anyway, the backup for the parking study to support the assumptions was provided. It's in the seeker folder, and I'd like DOT to review the study. I don't think they have yet.
We usually don't, generally don't send the parking reductions to DOT.
I would like them to check the assumptions, because it's modal splits and so on, about whether or not their claim that you don't need this parking, because they're saying the demand is only like 18 spaces.
And whether or not they need it they should do a weekend study as well. Right? There's an assumption that says they shouldn't do a weekend study because there would be more traffic on these days. And I'm not sure if that's the case on Bell.
Right. I think that what they could do is show us, so they're working with these assumptions from the various EISs, right? So the assumptions are EISs that did these studies, modal split data and all of that. And so they say, I think the number is like 18 trips per 1,000 gross square feet during the week, and fewer trips per 1,000 gross square feet on the weekend. That's how they come to the conclusion that there's going to be less demand on the weekend. So assuming that those assumptions are fair, that's where DOT comes in. That's why I want DOT, because working with DOT, we've had them change assumptions several times over the last 2 years. I just want to make sure we're working in this census tract with the right assumption, because it's not close to the subway. The only way to get here is by bus, or it's a long haul from the subway. Right?
They didn't provide feedback for the traffic parameters they utilized, and I was looking into the traffic study, but I couldn't. They didn't mention that they based this on another facility, because I believe they still don't have a tenant ready to move in.
Right, so
And they didn't put a reference in the other applicants when they don't have even a tenant. They based the design parameters for the traffic study on something.
They did, so that's the thing about when you read these studies, there's the little footnotes, and the footnote says we based it on the EIS for Flushing Commons, or whatever it is. So they have 2 EISs that are referenced in their split data. And then, that's why I mentioned in the seeker folder, which is a separate folder, right? That's where the backup data is. So you'll go there, and it's a little section from the EIS of whatever their support was, so that you can actually see, it's a page from the EIS, and where the study concluded that. So I prefer them not to use, an assumption about a neighborhood location that has less traffic, has less demand. I prefer that they use something where city planning or DOT or somebody accepted the splits, because that seems more scientific to me, and was reviewed their EISs, so the public reviewed that, right? So the public would have commented on, arguably, on whether 18 trips per 1,000 gross square feet is a feasible number in that census tract, right? So, yeah, it's just that the numbers, DOT changes its perspective a lot on these. Yeah. Okay.
I have questions about the operations of the parking area. So the hours of operation, since the statement says the attended parking is coincident with the operating hours of the building, whether or not there are reservoir spaces, because it doesn't appear there are, where does the attendant take the car upon entering? Where does the attendant bring the car upon leaving? How are car owners protected when in the parking lot? Is there some kind of guardrail separating the stackers from the car owners on the concrete walkway?
So say that again, so with this last one, the stackers and
So if you look, there the stackers, and then there's a pedestrian concrete walkway against the wall. But it wasn't clear to me if there's some kind of wall or fencing that protects them from being too close to those stackers.
It just
when
goes
they're
right up
walking.
against,
The stackers go right up against the concrete pathway.
Yeah, okay.
Which goes along the wall.
and according to that, if you think about that though, the driver of the car is not getting out over there. We had this with one of the housing projects, where it was a similar kind of thing, where the assumption was that the driver had to walk around the car to go onto the little pathway to go into the building. In that case, I'm pretty sure that was at-grade parking, so it's a little more believable that you'll go out and you'll walk around the path. But in this case, nobody is going to be getting out of their cars there. They're all going to get out of the car somewhere in that drive-up. So the path actually up against the building makes no sense, right? I mean, other than for maintenance or something, but not for a pedestrian.
But they do have several openings along that path into the lobby of the building. Which leads me to believe that people who are getting their car don't have to go outside of the building and back in. They could go into one of those entrances, I think there are 2 or 3, and walk along the path to the entryway of the garage and then request their car.
Okay. Anybody else?
We're also waiting for the phase 1 to determine if further hazmat reviews.
But the building's built.
Right, so it would be more like indoor air quality if there's windows on the building to test the indoor air quality. DEP doesn't always just assume because it's built already that
Yeah.
you don't have to do.
Was this the site that was subject to some kind of environmental something or other?
Yeah, there was a lot of DEC stuff.
Yeah.
DEC work on the site.
Yeah.
Because it was a gas station, and I told DEP that, but they still wanted to look at the phase 1.
Okay.
Done? This concludes the public review session for February 10th, 2020.
Yeah.